Hi, I'm Sophia Lane. And this is the story of how I showed up at my sister's wedding after 11 long years. A wedding that wasn't supposed to have me in it. But I made sure I was there. And when I walked through those doors, the truth I carried shook everyone to their core. If you're hearing this right now, I want you to know, this isn't just any ordinary story. It's one filled with love, betrayal, pain, and ultimately revenge. And if you're curious to know how it all unfolded, stay with me until the end. Oh, and if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, hit like, drop a comment, and share this video with your friends. Because trust me, this one, you won't want to miss. For as long as I can remember, my sister Victoria Carter was the golden child. She had it all: beauty, charm, and the kind of confidence that could light up an entire room. Our parents adored her, society adored her, and even when she did wrong, she was somehow painted as the victim. And me, I was the forgotten one, the quiet shadow that trailed behind her. Sophia, the other daughter, the one people barely remembered at family gatherings. But life wasn't always like that. Once upon a time, Victoria and I were inseparable. We were best friends, sisters who whispered secrets late into the night, who promised to stand by each other no matter what. Until one night, everything changed. I was only 17 when my world shattered. At that age, love is supposed to be innocent, pure, almost like a dream. I had fallen in love with someone I thought was my forever. His name was Ethan Moore. He wasn't rich, he wasn't famous, but he was kind. He noticed me when no one else did. When I spoke, he listened. When I dreamed, he encouraged. But Victoria, she noticed too. She noticed the way Ethan looked at me, the way I smiled around him, the way my heart raced whenever he was near. And instead of being happy for me, she wanted it for herself. And she got it. In one night, she destroyed everything. I remember it vividly. The night of our family's summer gala. Ethan had promised to meet me at the garden after dinner. I waited under the fairy lights, holding my breath, clutching a small silver bracelet I had bought for him. But Ethan never came. Hours later, I found him with Victoria. She stood there in her glittering dress, his jacket draped over her shoulders, her lips stained with the proof of betrayal. And when she looked at me, she didn't flinch. She smiled. That smile carved itself into my memory, a cruel reminder of everything I lost in one night. I ran away that evening, not just from the gala but from home, from my family, from the pain of seeing the two people I loved most betray me so effortlessly. No one stopped me. No one came looking. Or maybe they did, but by then I was gone. 11 years. 11 years of silence, of rebuilding myself, of carrying the weight of heartbreak, betrayal, and loneliness. But also 11 years of becoming stronger, smarter, harder. I left the broken girl behind and forged someone new. But fate has a funny way of calling you back to the place you swore you'd never return. One afternoon, as I sat in my apartment overlooking the city I now called home, a letter came. My hands trembled as I opened it, the neat handwriting familiar in a way that sent chills down my spine. It was an invitation to Victoria's wedding, and the name written beside hers, Ethan Moore. My heart nearly stopped. My chest tightened until I couldn't breathe. 11 years later, and the two of them were finally making official what they had started the night they destroyed me. But what they didn't know was this. I wasn't the same Sophia anymore. The girl who left in tears was gone. The woman who returned was here for one reason: revenge. When the wedding day arrived, I stood at the edge of the grand church. The music floated in the air, the laughter of guests echoing down the hall. I could see her through the glass doors, Victoria, radiant in white, surrounded by the life she had stolen from me. But when those doors opened and I stepped inside, heads turned, eyes widened, murmurs spread like wildfire. And for the first time in 11 years, My sister's perfect smile faltered. 'Cause she recognized me. And she knew. Her past had just walked back into her future. They thought I was gone forever. They thought time had buried me, erased me, made me a ghost. But ghosts, they always come back. And sometimes they don't just haunt. They burn. The silence in the church the moment I walked in was deafening. Every head turned. I could feel their eyes on me, judging, whispering, trying to place my face. 11 years had changed me, sculpted me into someone unrecognizable, yet familiar enough to stir unease. Victoria's smile faltered for just a second, but that second was enough. I saw the tremor in her lips, the flicker of fear in her eyes. She knew who I was, and she knew why I was there. The bridesmaids looked confused, the guests murmured, but the ceremony pressed forward. I took my seat quietly near the back, but my presence echoed louder than the organ music. My heartbeat thumped like war drums, steady and relentless. As I sat there, memories came rushing back. The night I left, the way my parents had cried but never searched hard enough, the way Ethan's arms had been wrapped around Victoria. The betrayal still burned in my chest, a fire that years could never extinguish. But this time, I wasn't a broken girl hiding from her pain. I was a woman with a plan. The reception was where the true game began. After the vows, after the rings, after the kiss that made my stomach twist with both anger and sorrow, the guests poured into the grand hall for dinner and dancing. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above, golden ribbons decorated every table, and laughter filled the air. But all I could hear was the whisper of my own revenge. I stayed in the shadows at first, watching. Victoria floated around like royalty, her dress glimmering, her hand always clutching Ethan's. He looked older now, lines around his eyes, a little less fire in his smile. But the part of me that once loved him still ached, even as I hated him. That's the cruelest part of betrayal. You don't stop loving. You just start hurting. A man approached me, pulling me from my thoughts. He was tall, dressed sharply in a navy suit. His dark hair brushed neatly back. "I don't think we've met," he said with a polite smile. "I'm Daniel Hayes, friend of the groom. And you are?" I hesitated. Revealing my name too soon could ruin everything. So I offered a small smile of my own. "An old friend of the family," I replied smoothly. "It's been a long time." Daniel studied me, curiosity sparking in his eyes, but he didn't press. Instead, he offered me a glass of champagne. "Well, old friend or not, welcome back. Tonight's supposed to be about celebration, right?" I accepted the glass, though my lips barely touched it. Celebration. What a twisted word for what this night meant to me. It wasn't long before Victoria made her way toward me. Her steps were graceful, but I could see the tightness in her jaw, the tension in her shoulders. "Sophia," she whispered, her voice sharp but hushed. "What are you doing here?" I tilted my head, feigning innocence. "What do you mean?" "I was invited." Her eyes widened slightly. She knew she hadn't sent me an invitation. That meant someone else had. But who? "Don't cause a scene," she hissed through clenched teeth, her perfect smile plastered on for the watching guests. "This is my day." I leaned in, close enough that only she could hear. "Oh, Victoria. Your day is just beginning." The color drained from her face, but she quickly turned away, laughing loudly for appearances as she rejoined Ethan. I watched them, their hands clasped together, their lips meeting in quick kisses. But behind Ethan's eyes, I saw something. Flicker. Doubt. Regret. Or was I just imagining it? Either way, I knew my presence unsettled them both. And that was only the start. Later that evening, as the music swelled and couples danced across the polished floor, I slipped away. I needed air, needed to clear my head before I drowned in the sea of memories. Outside, under the soft glow of lanterns strung across the courtyard, I breathed deeply. And then I heard footsteps. It was Ethan. For a moment, my heart betrayed me, beating wildly like it used to all those years ago. He looked at me with cautious recognition, his brow furrowed. "Sophia," he whispered, as if saying my name might summon the past. I turned to face him, every muscle in my body tight. Surprised to see me. His lips parted, but no words came out at first. Finally he managed. I thought you were gone." I let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, I was. But gone doesn't mean forgotten. At least, not for me." Ethan's eyes softened, guilt shadowing his face. "Sophia, I never meant for." I raised a hand, silencing him. Don't you dare try to explain. You made your choice. Both of you did." He lowered his gaze, shame etched into every line of his face. But then, quietly, he said something I didn't expect. "I never stopped thinking about you." The words hit me like a storm. My chest tightened, my mind spun. Part of me wanted to believe him, to cling to those words like a lifeline. But another part, the stronger part, knew better. "Save your lies for your bride," I snapped, stepping back. "You made your bed. Now lie in it." But as I walked away, my heart betrayed me again, aching with the memory of what we once had. The night pressed on, and with it, my plan began to take shape. I wasn't here just to watch or to stir old wounds. I was here to expose the truth. The lies Victoria had built her life upon. Because the world saw her as perfect, untouchable. But I knew her secrets. I knew the darkness behind her smile. And soon, everyone else would too. As I sat back down inside, Daniel appeared again, curious as ever. "You look like you're planning something," he said lightly, though his eyes were sharp. I offered him a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "Maybe I am." Daniel chuckled, raising his glass. "Well, whatever it is, I'd love to watch." I studied him for a moment, wondering if he could become an ally or if he was just another obstacle. Either way, the game was moving forward. And I was ready. That night, as the newlyweds danced their first dance, I stood at the edge of the crowd, silent, unseen. My eyes never left them. Victoria thought she had won. Ethan thought the past was buried. But they were both wrong. Because I had returned not just to witness their happiness. I had returned to shatter it. Sometimes the past doesn't just whisper, it screams. And when it does, everyone finally hears the truth. The day after the wedding, the city felt heavy with memories I had tried to bury for over a decade. The invitation to Victoria and Ethan's wedding had been the first spark. But now, as I walked through the familiar streets of my hometown, it was like the ghosts of the past were trailing me everywhere I went. Every corner held a memory. Every cafe, every park bench, every streetlight whispered secrets of a life I had abandoned. Yet there was no turning back. I had come too far, prepared too long, to simply fade into the shadows again. My plan had begun, and it required patience, cunning, and understanding of the very people who thought they had all the power. Victoria's golden life had been built on appearances. She smiled, charmed, and manipulated, all while keeping the cracks hidden beneath layers of perfection. But perfection is fragile, and I had the tools to expose it. The first step was subtle. I attended a brunch the day after the wedding, an informal gathering of close family and friends. The room buzzed with laughter, congratulations, and the kind of superficial joy only found at such events. But my presence was anything but superficial. I chose my seat carefully, observing the way Victoria laughed at jokes that weren't funny, the way Ethan avoided eye contact when she whispered in his ear. There were cracks in their armor. And cracks are all it takes to bring down even the most polished facade. I didn't have to wait long. A whispered conversation caught my attention. Victoria, speaking to one of her bridesmaids, her tone low, carried the weight of anxiety she had never shown in public. "I can't believe she showed up," she hissed. After all these years. How did she even find out? Her words were like fuel. I knew then that she was scared. That fear made her vulnerable. And vulnerability is something you can use if you know how to approach it. I sipped my coffee casually, letting her notice me without seeming obvious. She glanced my way, eyes narrowing ever so slightly. A flicker of recognition crossed her features, a silent acknowledgement that I was no longer the girl she thought she had broken. Later that afternoon, I took a walk around the neighborhood where we had grown up. It was quiet, almost eerily so, as if the town itself had been waiting for me to return. I stopped in front of the old house, the one I had fled from all those years ago. Memories flooded back, whispered arguments, broken promises, and nights spent crying alone while my sister slept peacefully in the room next door. I clenched my fists, letting the anger fuel me. 11 years of silent suffering, of watching her take everything I had wanted. Love, attention, even my own family's approval, had all led to this moment. But unlike the girl I had been, I wasn't going to break. Not this time. I had learned to turn pain into strategy, heartbreak into strength, and betrayal into action. That evening I began making discreet inquiries. I reached out to people Victoria had relied on to maintain her image. Old friends, colleagues, even minor acquaintances who knew things she didn't want the world to see. With every piece of information I gathered, the picture of her life became clearer. Victoria's charm had been a shield, but behind it, there were truths she desperately wanted to keep hidden. Financial troubles, hidden debts, questionable business deals, and relationships that were less than pure. Every secret was a thread, and I intended to pull them all. By nightfall, I had a small dossier, enough to start planting seeds of doubt without causing immediate alarm. The first move would be subtle. A whisper here, a glance there, enough to make the right people notice things that Victoria had worked so hard to conceal. But revenge isn't just about exposing someone. It's about timing, about patience, about letting them fall at the precise moment when they believe themselves untouchable. And I intended to make sure Victoria felt every bit of fear, regret, and helplessness she had inflicted on me. I returned to the hotel where I had stayed for the wedding, sitting quietly in the room overlooking the city. My phone buzzed. Messages from Daniel Hayes, the man who had already taken notice of me. "I saw the way you looked at her today," his text read. "You're planning something, aren't you?" I smiled, a small, private smirk that belonged only to me. "Patience," I typed back. "You'll see soon enough." Daniel's response was immediate, tinged with curiosity and a hint of admiration. "I can't wait." Even he didn't fully understand my intentions yet. But that was okay. Some things were better left as mysteries until the right moment. The following days were a dance of careful movements. I attended family gatherings, social events, even casual visits to places I knew Victoria frequented. Everywhere I went, I planted subtle reminders of my presence, little things that made her uneasy. A carefully timed comment, a knowing glance, a seemingly innocent question that hinted at my awareness of things she thought were buried. And it worked. I saw her flinch, observed the small cracks forming in her confident exterior. She no longer smiled as freely around our parents. She began double-checking her stories, her explanations, her lies. She knew something was coming, even if she didn't know what. But amidst all this, a strange conflict brewed inside me. Part of me still mourned what we had lost. The innocence, the sisterhood, the family I had once loved so fiercely. I hated her, yes, but I also remembered the girl I had once confided in, the sister who had held my hand during childhood nightmares, who had made me laugh in moments of despair. It was a bitter truth. Revenge doesn't erase love. It merely coexists with it, a shadow that follows every action, every thought, every heartbeat. And love, even when buried under years of betrayal, can complicate even the most meticulous plans. One evening, as I sat in the quiet of my hotel room, the city lights flickering below, I reflected on what was to come. The plan was set, the pieces in motion. Victoria would be exposed, not with malice, but with undeniable truth. She would feel the consequences of her choices. And Ethan, he would finally see the reality of what he had embraced, the life he had chosen, and the woman he had wronged. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. 11 years of hurt, 11 years of planning, 11 years of silent strength. It all led to this moment. And I was ready. Because sometimes the past doesn't just return. It arrives with a purpose. And my purpose was clear. Justice, retribution, and the ultimate truth. Revenge is like fire. It starts small, almost unnoticed, but once it catches, it consumes everything in its path. The morning after the reception, Sophia woke early. The sunlight spilled into her hotel room, yet her mind was already ablaze with plans. Today would be the day she made her first move. A subtle, strategic strike designed to unsettle Victoria without giving away the full truth. Patience had been her ally, but action was now required. She dressed carefully, choosing a sleek, understated outfit that allowed her to blend in while still maintaining an air of confidence. Her hair fell perfectly, her makeup neutral yet striking. She looked nothing like the 17-year-old girl who had fled in tears 11 years ago. This Sophia Lane was calculated, composed, and dangerous in ways her sister could never anticipate. The target was simple: Victoria's reputation. She had built her golden life on flawless appearances, and Sophia knew that even a small crack in that image could spark doubt, gossip, and suspicion. The first step was to gather allies, people who had been quietly observing Victoria's life, quietly aware of the inconsistencies, jealous of her apparent perfection, or simply curious enough to notice if something unusual occurred. Sophia began with subtlety. She approached a few distant relatives and family friends during a brunch held at Victoria's new home. Her charm was effortless, her questions seemingly casual, yet every word was calculated. "Oh, Victoria seems so radiant, but I wonder how she manages all of her commitments," Sophia said lightly, sipping her tea. The words seemed innocent, yet they planted seeds of doubt. A few heads tilted, a few eyebrows raised. Mission 1, quietly destabilize, was underway. By mid-afternoon, Sophia shifted her attention to the digital front. She knew that in today's world, even the smallest online revelation could have massive consequences. Social media posts, seemingly innocuous photos, old business announcements, they could all be used strategically to expose inconsistencies in Victoria's carefully curated life. Sophia worked quickly, pulling up records she had discreetly collected over the past days. Financial discrepancies, messages that hinted at deception, and proof of her sister's manipulative tendencies. Every piece was small alone, but together they formed a narrative difficult to ignore. And she knew exactly who needed to see it first: Ethan. Ethan had been uncomfortable since the wedding. Sophia could sense it, the subtle tension in his movements, the occasional glances that betrayed his internal conflict. Tonight, she would make him confront the reality of what he had chosen. She sent him a carefully worded message. "Ethan, we need to talk. It's about Victoria. Tonight. Privately." Minutes later he replied, "Meet me at the terrace in an hour." Alone. Sophia smiled. The stage was set. As evening fell, the city lights twinkled below the terrace where Ethan waited, his figure silhouetted against the fading sun. He looked older, more burdened. The spark of naive confidence he once had now replaced with uncertainty. "Sophia," he said cautiously as she approached, "what is this about?" She handed him a small folder, thick with evidence. His eyes widened as he flipped through the documents, each page confirming things he had suspected but refused to acknowledge. "She's been lying, Ethan. All these years, everything she's built, it's not as perfect as she claims. You need to see the truth," Sophia said, her voice calm, yet edged with intensity. He looked up, guilt and confusion warring on his face. I didn't want to see this. I didn't want to believe it. And yet, Sophia replied softly. Here it is. Truth has a way of finding even the most stubborn hearts. Ethan remained silent, the weight of realization pressing down on him. Sophia didn't need to say more. She had planted the seed. The storm was coming. Back at the reception hall, Victoria was beginning to feel the first tremors of Sophia's subtle strikes. She noticed a few relatives exchanging glances, whispers that seemed directed at her, curious questions that unsettled her polished composure. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to anyone else, but Victoria felt it like a knife to the chest. Her perfect world was beginning to wobble, and for the first time, fear took root. She excused herself and stepped into the hallway, trying to regain control of her thoughts. But the damage had been done. Sophia observed from a distance, her face serene, her mind racing. She wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. The first strike had been small, indirect, enough to create doubt but not panic. Sophia knew that escalation would come in stages. Over the next few days, she would increase pressure, carefully exposing more truths to the right people, ensuring that the cracks in Victoria's armor grew larger and more visible. Yet amidst the strategy and planning, Sophia felt a strange pang, something she hadn't expected. Watching Ethan grapple with his feelings, seeing him begin to understand the consequences of his choices, stirred a mix of vindication and sorrow. The past and present collided in ways that reminded her of the girl she once was. But revenge demanded focus. Emotions were dangerous, distractions even more so. She reminded herself, patience, precision, and timing. That night, as she returned to her hotel room, Sophia sat by the window overlooking the city. The moonlight reflected on the glass, casting shadows that seemed to mirror her dual nature, both avenger and victim, both past and present, both broken and empowered. Her phone buzzed. Daniel had sent a message. I saw you at the terrace. You're not just a ghost from the past. You're a force to be reckoned with. Sophia smiled, a small, satisfied curve of her lips. The past always has a way of catching up, Daniel. And tonight it begins. She turned off the light and lay down, already envisioning the next stage of her plan. Victoria's house of lies would not survive her careful dismantling. Every secret, every betrayal, every hidden flaw. Soon, all would be revealed. And when it happened, there would be no running, no hiding, no excuses. Because some truths are unavoidable. And some revenge is inevitable. Some truths are like storms. They arrive quietly, then unleash a force impossible to ignore. Tonight, the storm was mine to command. Days had passed since Sophia's first subtle strikes, and the tension around Victoria was growing palpable. The whispers, the sideways glances, the unexpected questions, small but insistent, had begun to erode the image Victoria had carefully cultivated over the years. For the first time, she felt the walls of her golden life trembling. But Sophia wasn't done. She had been patient, biding her time, gathering the precise pieces needed to reveal the full picture. And now, the moment had arrived to escalate. It began at the annual family gala, a public event Victoria had once dominated effortlessly. The hall glittered with chandeliers, the air thick with perfumed conversations, laughter, and champagne. Victoria entered like a queen, radiant in her designer gown, expecting admiration, respect, and adoration. Instead, she found uncertainty. The subtle seeds Sophia had planted had grown. Guests exchanged glances, their eyes occasionally darting to Sophia as if she were the focal point of some silent revelation. The unease in the room was undeniable. Victoria caught sight of Sophia across the room. Her breath caught. The calm, confident mask she wore cracked ever so slightly. Sophia gave her a slow, knowing smile, one that promised revelation and justice in equal measure. Sophia moved quietly among the guests, engaging casually in conversation. But beneath the polite exchanges, there was strategy. Every word, every gesture was calculated to increase the tension surrounding Victoria. A few key allies, people who had long suspected Victoria's duplicity, were now observing her with new eyes. They whispered, asked questions, and let subtle doubts settle. Victoria, sensitive to every reaction, felt her composure slipping. Sophia had begun the public unraveling, and it was intoxicating. Then came the private moment with Ethan, a confrontation Sophia had carefully planned. She found him on the balcony, away from the crowd, his expression tense and conflicted. "You've done enough," he said quietly, as if warning her not to go further. "Not nearly enough," Sophia replied, her voice calm but unwavering. "You need to understand the truth, Ethan. And tonight there's no turning back." She handed him another folder, this one more damning than the last. It contained evidence of Victoria's financial mismanagement, hidden relationships, and manipulation of family members. Each page was a nail in the coffin of the life Victoria had built on lies. Ethan's face went pale as he reviewed the documents. I had no idea it was this bad," he whispered. Sophia's gaze was steady. "And now you see why I've returned. Not to destroy for the sake of destruction, but to reveal what was always hidden. The truth cannot remain buried forever." He nodded slowly, a mix of guilt and comprehension settling over him. "You're right. I should have seen this years ago." Back inside the gala, Victoria began to feel the weight of scrutiny. Questions that had seemed innocent before now felt pointed. Remarks from guests, previously brushed off, began to sting. The whispers grew louder, the curious glances multiplied. It was subtle, yet unmistakable. Her perfect image was cracking. And the more she tried to maintain control, the more obvious her anxiety became. Sophia observed from a distance, her heart steady but her mind alert. Revenge was never about immediate gratification. It was about precision, timing, and impact. And tonight the impact was building. Later, in a carefully orchestrated moment, Sophia approached the microphone during a toast. The room quieted, guests turning their attention to the unexpected speaker. Sophia's presence commanded attention, not because of loud words or anger, but because of the quiet confidence that radiated from her. "I've been away for many years," she began, her voice steady, clear, and magnetic. "And during that time I've learned a lot. About life, about family, about love, and about betrayal. Some truths are hard to face, but ignoring them doesn't make them disappear." A murmur ran through the crowd. Victoria's smile faltered. She could feel the tension, the anticipation, the subtle charge in the air. Sophia continued, "I returned tonight not to shame anyone, but to illuminate the reality that sometimes appearances can be deceiving. And for those of us who have been hurt, ignored, or betrayed, confronting the truth is the only way to move forward." Eyes widened, whispers turned into gasps, and the atmosphere in the room shifted. People began to piece together the fragments of information they had observed, the inconsistencies they had noticed, and the subtle cues Sophia had planted over the past days. Victoria's face paled. The golden girl, untouchable and flawless for so long, was now vulnerable. And it was all because Sophia had returned, poised, composed, and unyielding. After the toast, Sophia stepped down, her mission clear. She had delivered the first wave of revelation. The guests now understood that Victoria's perfect life was not as it seemed. Small cracks had widened into chasms. Later that night, in the quiet aftermath of the gala, Sophia confronted Victoria privately. Her sister's composure had crumbled, fear and desperation etched into her features. "You think you're untouchable," Sophia said softly. "You've spent years manipulating, lying, and stealing from everyone around you. But tonight, the truth has come for you. Victoria's voice trembled. Sophia, please, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think, Sophia replied firmly. And now you have to face it. Not just for me, but for everyone you've hurt along the way. For the first time, Victoria felt powerless. No charm, no lies, no carefully constructed facade could save her. The reckoning had arrived, and it was inevitable. Sophia left the room that night with a sense of calm satisfaction. The first major wave of her plan had succeeded. Victoria's life was destabilized, her carefully maintained image cracking, and Ethan, finally confronted with the reality, was beginning to understand the consequences of his choices. Yet, Sophia knew the final steps were still ahead. The storm had begun, but the crescendo was yet to come. She would ensure that every truth was revealed, every betrayal confronted, and every lesson learned. Because some wounds can only heal when the truth is known, and some revenge can only be complete when justice is undeniable. Revenge isn't just about making someone suffer. It's about reclaiming your power, your voice, and your life. Tonight, the past and present collide, and only the truth will remain. The morning sun poured golden light over the city, yet Sophia Lane felt a chill of anticipation. Tonight would be the final act, the moment where every secret, every deception, every lie Victoria had built her life upon would finally face the light. For 11 years, Sophia had carried the weight of betrayal, heartbreak, and loss. But now that weight had transformed into resolve. She had returned not as the broken girl who fled in tears, but as a force of truth, measured, calculated, and unrelenting. This was not just about revenge. It was about justice. And it was about ensuring that Victoria, and anyone complicit in her web of lies, understood the cost of deceit. Sophia arrived at Victoria's mansion in the late afternoon under the guise of casual family visits. Guests were already gathering for a small post-wedding celebration, unaware that the night would shift from joy to revelation. She moved with quiet confidence, her every gesture precise, her presence commanding attention without seeming confrontational. Victoria noticed immediately. Her smile faltered, her posture stiffened. 11 years of superiority, of perfection, of control, had led her to this moment, and for the first time she felt vulnerability creep in. Sophia approached her sister calmly. "Victoria, we need to talk," she said. Her tone was calm but firm, an unspoken promise of confrontation. Victoria's lips pressed together. "I've already told you. I don't know what you mean." "You do," Sophia replied softly. "And tonight, everyone else will too." The gathering began, and Sophia allowed the subtle tension she had nurtured for weeks to ripple through the room. She whispered strategic words to key guests, shared discreet evidence in casual conversation, and dropped hints that left no room for doubt. Each revelation was minor alone, but together they formed an undeniable truth. Victoria's life was not the perfect picture she had presented. Eyes widened, whispers circulated, and conversations shifted. Victoria's carefully curated image began to crumble. And at the center of it all, Sophia observed the growing panic, the trembling hands, and the faltering confidence of the sister who had once seemed untouchable. Ethan was next. He had been watching from a distance, silent, conflicted, and unsure. Sophia approached him with a folder containing the final pieces of evidence. Messages, financial documents, and proof of manipulation and lies that even he could not ignore. "You need to see this," Sophia said, handing him the folder. "I've shown you pieces before, but the full picture is here. You need to understand the reality of what you embraced." Ethan's hands shook as he read. His expression was a mixture of shock, guilt, and understanding. I never knew it was this bad," he whispered. I thought she was different." Sophia's eyes softened momentarily. "We all believed in illusions. But illusions can't last forever. Tonight the truth comes home." The pivotal moment arrived when Sophia requested the attention of all guests. She stepped into the center of the room, her posture commanding, her voice steady and clear. "Thank you all for gathering here," she began. "Tonight is a night of celebration, but it is also a night for truth. For too long, appearances have deceived many, including family, friends, and even loved ones. The time has come to reveal what has been hidden for far too long." Gasps filled the room as Sophia began sharing carefully curated facts. Each revelation was precise, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. She spoke of manipulations, financial mismanagement, and betrayals, revealing the true face of Victoria's carefully constructed life. Victoria's color drained. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Every lie, every betrayal she had buried was now exposed in front of everyone she had once controlled. The guests reacted with shock and disbelief, some whispering in disbelief, others confronting Victoria directly with questions. Ethan looked on, a mix of anger and sorrow etched into his features. He finally turned to Sophia. "You've done what I could not," he said quietly. "Thank you for showing me the truth." Sophia nodded. She didn't need gratitude. The truth was her own victory. The reckoning had begun, and the balance had shifted. Victoria, now facing the undeniable reality, collapsed onto a nearby chair. Her composed exterior shattered. I never," she began, but no explanation could undo what had been revealed. The weight of years of lies, manipulation, and selfishness pressed upon her, and she understood that the life she had taken for granted was now fractured beyond repair. Sophia approached, standing tall yet composed. "It's over, Victoria. The past doesn't forgive, and neither do the choices we make. But there's a lesson here. Deceit may work temporarily, but truth always finds a way." Tears welled in Victoria's eyes, not from sorrow for the consequences of her actions, but from the bitter realization of her failures. Sophia had given her a moment of clarity, a chance to understand the damage she had caused, and perhaps, if she chose wisely, a path to redemption. As the night drew to a close, Sophia stepped outside, the cool breeze brushing her face. The city lights shimmered below, a reflection of her own journey, from heartbreak to empowerment, from betrayal to triumph. She had returned for justice, yes, but also for herself. For 11 years she had been silent, watching, waiting. Now she had reclaimed her power, her voice, and her life. And in the quiet of the night, as she looked back at the house where the storm of truth had unfolded, Sophia Lane finally felt the weight lift from her shoulders. She had faced the past, confronted the lies, and emerged stronger. Love, pain, betrayal, and revenge had all intertwined to shape her into who she was meant to be. And the lessons were clear. The truth always finds a way. Justice may require patience, and the strength to reclaim your life lies within you, no matter how many years have passed. Sophia smiled, a small, serene curve of her lips. The storm had passed. The reckoning was complete. And the woman who had once run from her past had finally returned, victorious.